So I would now like to invite Pema for his introductory talk on the topic of the Joy Challenge. And then followed from there, we will have some time for practice, and then we will have our usual discussions. So if anyone has any questions along the way, feel free to put it into the chat and we will get to them afterwards. So Pema, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So just as we begin, my habit is to just set intention. So which in my tradition means to simply, whatever reason we're here is okay, whatever we want to get out of practicing the Dharma is okay, but we do a bit of an adjustment to our view so that we include benefiting others as part of our reason for engaging with the Dharma. So whenever I kind of do any Dharma activity in our tradition, this is kind of normal to set our intention. So I'd just like to just quickly take a moment for us all to set our intention, to understand that we're here for our own benefit, for our own liberation, but we're also here for the benefit of all sentient beings, and that our goal is to assist ourselves and other beings equally. So we'll just take a second to set our intention in that way. Okay. And now we just take a little bit of time to settle and be here where we are. So we're going to talk about joy. I'm not sure where everyone is in their Dharma journey, so I'll try and cover it in a kind of accessible way. So most of you will probably know that joy is one of the four immeasurables, which includes love, compassion, joy, and equanimity or evenness. The Buddha designated those four qualities or aspects of mind as essential to enlightenment. So essential to attaining enlightenment, but also as essential qualities of the enlightened mind itself. So on attaining enlightenment, the mind has those four qualities. It's loving, boundlessly loving, it's boundlessly compassionate, it's joyous, and it's even, which means two things: to treat all beings completely equally, but also to treat everything that rises in the mind with the same kind of openness and evenness, and every situation in our life, to treat that with openness and evenness as well. So traditionally, the four immeasurables are taught in a certain kind of an order, but the way that we're going to be talking about it tonight is almost not quite a reverse, but a bit of a reverse, because this was handed down to us from Togden Amtrin, who's a Drukpa Kagyu yogi. Drukpa Kagyu is one of the practice lineages in Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So basically, the way he taught this to us was to approach joy first. The reason being, because joy is quite intrinsic to our nature. It might not seem that way, but joy is actually easier to connect with. To be selflessly loving is quite hard. To be selflessly compassionate, also kind of difficult. To treat all beings equally, to treat everything that rises in the mind equally, and to treat all situations equally, also a bit difficult, takes some practice. But we all have access to ordinary joy quite simply, quite easily. And the version of joy that is part of our awakened nature or our Buddha nature, that's also connected to that simple, ordinary joy. So the idea is that by connecting with that joy, we connect with our own nature, and then the other immeasurables, love, compassion, and equanimity or evenness, they actually arise naturally in that order. So joy, love, compassion, evenness, or equanimity. So the practice is very simple. It's based on this idea that, which comes from the Buddha, who said, without joy, there's no enlightenment. So joy is not a preliminary, and it's not optional. Joy is essential. It's essential to enlightenment. And when we're talking about joy, we're not talking about simple pleasure. So we're not talking about just ordinary kind of delight. So joy is selfless. It's open and embracing, and it also has a kind of a loving quality. So joy and metta in particular actually are co-emergent. When one rises, the other rises at the same time. So, whereas pleasure, ordinary sort of pleasure, is it's about the self. It's located in the self, and it's also kind of grasping and clingy. A good example of that is like if you're walking in a field and you see a beautiful flower. Joy is to simply appreciate it and be open-hearted in the appreciation, but to sort of grasp is to sort of cut the flower, take it home, want it. And then of course what happens, it perishes and no one else gets to share it. But joy is like wanting to share the experience with other people, other beings. So joy also has this aspect of sharing, and also there's an appreciation for other people's happiness. And there's a general appreciation and gratitude for existence, particularly for the practice, which leads to liberation. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there's like a whole way you can think about this, and I won't go into it in too much detail, I'll just touch it very, briefly. So this practice of joy is beneficial on all levels of the path. So the Sutrayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, and also Dzogchen. So, but and it actually doesn't really change much from vehicle to vehicle. It's much of the same, but the kind of its expression or benefits can change, that can transform as you move through those different vehicles. But ultimately, the vehicles are all equal. Sutrayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Dzogchen, all completely equal. All will lead to enlightenment if we engage with them with commitment and open-heartedness. So it's not about high or low. And actually, these things, joy, love and kindness, compassion, equanimity, they transcend these vehicles. They're actually more fundamental than that, more fundamental to the Dharma. So basically, I'll just read out what we call the pith instruction that came from Togden Amtrin. It's very simple, just a few lines. It's deceptively simple. There's a lot in these few lines, but also there's sort of it's a little bit like poetry as well. So I'll just read through it. It's very simple. Arouse joy and rest in its natural radiance. Not only is this the heart of the path, so joy being the heart of the path, but indeed it is the heart of awakening. So that's the couple of lines summary of the entire idea of joy being an essential part of practice, an essential part of awakening. So just kind of read it again, so make sure that you've heard it. Arouse joy and rest in its natural radiance. Not only is this the heart of the path, but indeed it is the heart of awakening. So the thing about joy is that it opens the heart. All Dharma, all of it, is about opening the heart. There is actually nothing else to be done in this thing we call Dharma. It's about opening the heart, awakening ourselves to our true nature, Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it, and benefiting sentient beings. So the opening of the heart through joy, which then becomes love, which then becomes compassion, which then becomes evenness, is a path in itself. In and of itself, it's enough, if you practice it in the right kind of a way. So basically the idea is, because sometimes it's not easy to connect with joy, sometimes, the world is what it is. We've also got our own problems. But the idea is that at first we sort of, we fabricate it, not fabricate the joy, but we create a situation in which joy can be felt. And that's what the practice is, which is called the path of joy. And it's really very simple. You simply choose, as you know, meditation always has an object. In the path of joy, there's also an object, and that's up to the individual to choose what that object is. It can be anything from, the open sky was the traditional object chosen in Tibet, but also you can choose like a flower, sitting by a river, sitting by your window looking at a tree, bird song, anything really. The more kind of like natural, quiet things are better, because things like music and TV and stuff like that does give us ordinary joy, they also agitate the mind. So usually for most people, the kind of joy we're talking about that is intrinsic rather than external, it it rises in response to being relaxed, in response to beauty in nature, in response to laughter, actually, sometimes. So it is intrinsic to us. We're not producing it. We're sitting still, choosing something that makes it easier for us to feel it. And then we're sitting in the feeling of joy, and it will grow. Grow is a funny word. It is already there. It's an intrinsic part of our nature. But when we sit still and we pay attention, it seems to grow, simply because your attention's on it. Your awareness is on joy as your object of meditation. So it seems to grow, but actually it doesn't change. It's always there. And then you sit in that experience of joy for like 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be a very long time. In fact, in our tradition, short periods of practice with breaks are considered to be more beneficial. And then after you've sat in joy for, say, 10 minutes, then you sit in shamatha. I'm not sure if all of you know what shamatha is, but calm abiding meditation, which simply means meditation in which the awareness is placed very gently on the breathing, not necessarily on the breathing as it leaves or enters and leaves the body, but on the whole experience of breathing, the bodily experience of breathing. And the traditional metaphor for the kind of attitude we have when we place our awareness on our breathing is just like a snowflake landing on a lake. So it's very sort of soft. And as soon as your awareness lands on its object, it becomes one with the object. So it's this very sort of gentle thing. The whole thing about the joy practice is it's very gentle, it's very simple, and you ease into it. So then you sit in shamatha after having done the joy practice. And what that does is they complement each other. So the joy practice, joy calms the mind. A joyful mind is a calm mind. It's not an agitated mind. So joy calms the mind. When you sit in shamatha, your shamatha is deeper. Likewise, shamatha calms the mind also, so that it's easy to feel the joy. So you get in touch with the joy. So they are two sides of the one coin in a way. And then over time, as you sit with joy, practice is no longer a chore. You look forward to sitting down to meditation. You look forward to your other practice, which might be being kind to people, protesting some injustice, any kind of engaged activity. You experience joy around that. And it protects you against what you could call like compassion fatigue and also just general fatigue, you know. So you always feel very kind of like enthusiastically joyful around your practice. And that joy, it helps you to let go. So joy helps you to release clinging, grasping, and also expectation and wanting for things to be a certain way. It's really quite powerful and profound, although very simple. And the thing about those four immeasurables is that I don't think we give them enough of our attention, because they're really essential to practice. They're essential to awakening, Buddha said so. And they are also the qualities that manifest when we are moving towards awakening, towards enlightenment. So in the Tibetan tradition, there's this saying, you know, proof that your practice is working is not that you know how to do rituals, not that you're some kind of holier than thou being. Proof that your practice is working is that you're kinder, you're more compassionate, you're more easygoing, you're comfortable in all situations because you're treating everything evenly. So the sign of a true practitioner are those simple things: kindness, compassion, evenness, relaxation in multiple settings. So I don't think we should treat them as like preliminaries or as optional. I think it's kind of essential that we do these things. Now, because we're all sitting in front of the TV, are we okay with time? Can we run through a bit of practice? Yep. So because we're all looking at screens, it's not the ideal way to do the joy practice, because you're just looking at my face, which is not necessarily a joyful activity. So we'll do a little practice where we close our eyes and we remember a joyful experience from the past. So this is also good if you are experiencing like melancholy or anxiety, we've had some kind of trauma, recent trauma, and you feel I can't connect with joy like in the now. So you could go back to a time when you could. So you remember a time when you could, you connect with that feeling, you allow it to grow, and then you just sit with it, and then you go into your shamatha. So I think because of time, we'll just do the joy part, because sitting in meditation for 10, 15 minutes on a video is not very entertaining. So I'll do a kind of guided joy practice, which is fairly simple. The posture is the same for cow inviting, back more or less straight. Hands, palms down on knees. You can do one of two things with the eyes, either leave them open and gaze just gently an arm's length or so in front of you, or in this situation, I think it's probably a better idea to close them. With your body, the founder of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition said whatever position is most comfortable is best. So, the only thing that really you need to worry about is the back is more or less straight, but not tight or taut. You can, if you like, you can have your mouth sort of just relaxed and closed. You can have it slightly open with the tongue resting behind your front teeth. Some people don't find that very comfortable. Either way is fine. And then the only other thing is to make sure that your head is kind of like in a sort of relaxed place. If your head is too high, your mind will be agitated. So in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we call the chin the accelerator or the brakes. So if the mind is agitated, drop the chin by a centimetre or so. If you're feeling dull and sluggish, you just pop it up. Another little sign that your head is too far forward is that you'll start to feel moisture gather at the corner of your lips. So pop your chin up a little bit. Likewise, if you've had a very agitated day, just drop the chin a little bit. It will help to subdue the mind. Or if you're feeling tired, pop it up a little bit. It's actually quite effective. All right, so first thing we do is we do a little bit of a quick in and out breath. So the breath pattern that we use to just sort of settle is in through the nose, not with any kind of force, just sort of naturally in through the nose, and then slightly more longer out breath. So in through the nose, out through the mouth. Do that again, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Do that a few times, whatever it takes to feel relaxed and centered. And then we think of a thing or a time or an experience when we have felt joy. And simply remember it. If you cast your mind back to a time when you felt clear, uninhibited joy. For me, that's walking in a rainforest. So I just think of the last time I was in a rainforest. And just remember how it felt in the body. How did you feel? You have a sense of how that feels, or how joy feels in the body. Just place your awareness on that feeling. Very gently. And just sit with it. Allow the feeling of joy to grow. Don't try to force it. Just let it be. Let it grow if it grows. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Just sit the feeling of joy. you become distracted by noise or sensations or thoughts, that's okay. Just let those thoughts and feelings come and then let them go. Just gently bring your awareness back to that body feeling, the feeling of joy. If you need to, just connect with the memory again, of that joyous moment. And then just sit, relax, rest with the joy. Okay. Stop that now, it's quite short. Normally, if we're doing this practice on our own or out in nature or something, we would then just take a short break. The purpose of the break is not ordinary. The purpose of the break is to bring joy into our ordinary life. And in time, you'll find that the break actually helps us to connect with joy when we're doing ordinary things. So we can have a sip of water, we can stretch, we can change our posture if we need to. But we stay kind of connected to the joy. We don't immediately start thinking about the past. We don't immediately start thinking about the future. So we just stay here, just having a little break. And then that would be like a minute or so, 2 minutes maybe of a break. And then you would do shamatha or calm abiding meditation. Those of you who are not aware what that is, I'll just really quickly run over that. Same posture, spine more or less straight, arms, hands, palms down on knees or thighs. You can sit in a chair with your feet on the ground. If you do that, it's good to cross your ankles. Neck in kind of like a relaxed kind of position. Eyes can be open or closed. Mouth open or closed. It's cool. Whichever is fine. Whichever is comfortable is what works. And then you just place your awareness very gently on your breathing, on the whole bodily experience of breathing. Very, very gently place your awareness on it. It's not like concentration. It's just being with your breathing. And then sitting with your breathing. And then if thoughts come, you let them come. Thoughts are not a problem. They're the natural radiance of the mind. So they come, you let them come, and then you just let them go. You don't get engaged. One of the metaphors that Togden Amtrin has shared is that the mind is like an empty house and thoughts are a wind blowing through it. So you just let that wind blow through. It doesn't matter. And actually you don't need to do anything to those thoughts, to sensations, to anything that occurs in the mind, because they are in their nature impermanent. They will rise, they will peak at a certain point, and then they'll dissipate of their own accord. You don't need to do anything at all. So they're not a problem at all. So we just let whatever comes, comes. We just remain resting gently with our breathing. It's really very simple. Generally speaking, you would do joy, the sitting with the joy for about 10 minutes, then you would have a break for a minute or two, then you would do shamatha for, as a beginning, at a start, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, But then you would extend the shamatha part to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you can do in your day. And then, of course, in time, you'll reach a point where you do not need to do the first part, the joy, the evoking of the joy part. It will just happen naturally. At that point, the joy practice, which is a method, can be dropped. You know, likewise, very few people achieve it, but shamatha is a method. Once calm abiding has been achieved, it can be dropped, you know. But this, the joy practice, actually can be, you can connect with that natural joy that is part of your fundamental goodness, your fundamental nature. In just a few months, I think, if you do it every day, 3 months maybe, you will start to actually have spontaneous joy that's not grasping, that's not fabricated, that's actually just the radiance of your own being. And then love will start to dawn naturally, love that is not about any particular thing or situation or person. It's just free flowing. It's like the sun shines on everything. Then compassion, then evenness. These things all will happen, you know. These qualities are already part of our fundamental nature. This practice simply puts us in connection with them, allows them to shine. It's really kind of simple and kind of amazing how simple it is. Unfortunately, this practice has been largely lost. The tantric deity associated with this practice is called gawa chenmo, which means great mother of joy. There are, as far as we know, there are no more statues of gawa chenmo anywhere. Kind of lost, and she's only mentioned, as far as we know, in one tantra. So it's been, at one time it was quite widely spread and particularly practiced by women, by simple folk, you know, who weren't in monasteries, weren't in part of the system. It was a simple sort of practice, practiced by women, taught by women, shared around quite easily, because it's quite easy. And the deity at the head of that system was gawa chenmo, but she's kind of been forgotten, which is a bit of a shame. But you don't need to believe in Tantra, you don't need to believe in any of that. You can just do the practice. You can be Buddhist adjacent, you don't have to be Buddhist at all, and it will still have some benefit. Even if you don't do the shamatha part, you just do the joy part. If for some reason, like if you have chronic pain, or if you have trauma, or if you have some other kind of reasons why you can't do shamatha, you can't do calm abiding meditation, just the joy part will be beneficial. It will help to calm the mind, give you a beneficial experience, open you to your own fundamental goodness, your own natural joy. And it's not a bad thing. So if you can't do shamatha, that's fine. You can just do the joy part. So I think that's it for me. You can open up to questions or whatever you like. I kept it short and sweet. I hope it was sweet. Anyway.
I think that was very sweet. Thank you so much, Pema. A very joyful talk and very good tips and teachings and sharing. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to move, and thank you for the practice as well. I got a lot of benefit from that, and I had a really busy day, so I appreciated that moment to really connect with joy and also with the shamatha practice that came from that. So thank you. Now what we would move into is what we usually do for this session is after the talk, I would pose a question to the group, and then we will have a discussion that follows from that. And the question that I would like to pose to the group, maybe unsurprisingly to everyone, noting our topic for today, is what are the challenges that you may face in practicing joy in your daily life? So I've put that into the chat box, and I invite everyone to just take a moment to think about that. And then feel free to pop into the chat any challenges that you may have in practicing joy. And for those who are here in person, you're welcome to write that down on the pieces of paper that's available to you. And for anyone else, if you prefer, instead of writing, you can also just verbalize your question or your comment, and we can then share that. And what I'll do is after we get some answers through, then Pema, I will ask those questions to you, and we will seek your advice.
Oh, great.
Okay, all right. So anyone who's here in person, there's some pieces of paper and pen. You're welcome to write something down. And if anyone has any questions generally that you'd like to ask Pema, you can also put that into the chat too.
I was just going to type in my own question.
Yeah. What's your question, Pema, that you would like to ask yourself?
Well, I think one of the kind of universal challenges to practice is time. This kind of practice that is not engaging with human beings type practice, you know. Yeah. So for me, because I have a full-time job and another job, so 2 jobs, you know. So time is always a challenge, and that's why I think this joy practice is actually kind of interesting, because it doesn't take very long at all and it has profound impacts. So I think you have to try it to see if it will have benefit for you, but you only need to try it, I think, a few times. I mean, I was like, because I came up doing all the fancy tantric things, and I was like, how could something so simple be so effective? But it actually is. I'm a complete convert. It is quite profoundly effective. We do have some things coming up here.
We do, yes. I'll ask those questions. But thank you just for that point about time. So Pema, what you were saying earlier as well is that we can also move this practice into our day-to-day practice too. So for those who don't have enough time, it's also possible, would you say, for them to practice in their day-to-day, you know, whatever they may be doing, whether it's washing the dishes, you know, sweeping the floors, also in their interactions with other people. Is that a practice that they could use for the mudita practice in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, 2 minutes of joy is worth a lot more than you might think. So if you're in the car, you can just, you know, look at the sky. The sky's almost everywhere, and if it's not a rainy, miserable day like we've had a lot of lately, you just look at the sky and just do the quick relaxation breath, which I think is really important if you're like in the middle of doing something. And just if you can't see something that sparks joy, like, you know, like a little bird or a flower or a tree, or just the feel of the breeze on your face, you know, anything little like that, then you can bring up a memory just for a couple of minutes and just connect with it, and then just move on with your day. It only, honestly, it takes a couple of minutes. In my tradition, well, for me personally, thinking of my teacher makes me feel joy like that. So I just think of my teacher all the time, like when I'm at the dentist, just think of her. And it's better, you know, it's better. You know, like I work at a university, which can be quite stressful. So, you know, in the middle of the stressful kind of day, I just think of my teacher and I instantly feel joy, you know, and it just softens everything, and it softens your reaction to people. And, you know, I think it's really kind of interesting. And also, like, it doesn't have to be big. At first, it'll be a very subtle feeling. You know, it doesn't have to be this transformative, euphoric sort of feeling. That's not what we're looking for. It's just it's very like a delightful relaxation. You know, it's a restful experience, and it can be quite quick. And if you do it multiple times a day, it will have that cumulative benefit. It's better to do it, you know, 2 or 3 times for 2 minutes a day than for an hour once a week. That's true of all practice. The daily part of it is really important. The habit of it is really important, rather than doing like extreme sport on Sunday, 7 hours of practice. You know, a little bit every day is much more beneficial, I find, for me anyway.
Thank you so much, Pema. Well, let's go to some of these questions that people have. So Fu, she says, sometimes past trauma comes up and I ruminate on it and get absorbed in negative thoughts. And just on that note, I do have someone else here in the audience with me, and they've said something very similar, which is the strong negative emotions. So negative thoughts, negative emotions, and past trauma, if that comes up in the practice of joy, what can we do about that, Pema?
Yeah, so that's cool. That negative emotions are the qualifying characteristic of samsara. We all have them. We all experience them. And many of us also have quite traumatic histories. So it is actually a normal part of our day to feel disturbing emotions, and for many of us to feel traumatized, you know, that's part of our day. So that has to be taken into account, you know. So if you are someone who has trauma, or if you are someone who has like a very stressful job and there's a lot of ruminating that goes on, or you've just experienced some sort of grief or loss, you know, then yes, it becomes tricky. It becomes tricky, but that's why it's called practice. So if we do it each day just for a little bit, it will build. And eventually, as I think I said at the beginning, a joyful mind is not an agitated mind. A joyful mind is not a disturbed mind. A joyful mind is open, loving, flexible, relaxed. But we have to get there. And the getting there is just, okay, I have trauma. It haunts me every day, but I'm going to take this 5 to 10 minutes for myself as part of my journey to recovery, you know. Yes, I've just lost someone. Yes, there's all this trauma going on with COVID and all this sort of stuff. But if we don't take the time to practice to start, it will never happen. So you have to set aside time to do this. Habit and routine are really important. And if you set aside a set time every day and a set place, you have your little chair in your kitchen or by a window or out in the garden or, I don't know, wherever you want. If it's the same place and the same time each day, then just the act of moving towards that spot and sitting down will begin to calm the mind. The habit is really important. And even if it's just 5 minutes, walk across the house to that spot, sit down 5 minutes, look out the window, look at a crystal, look at a picture of a flower, whatever you want. The habit of going to the same place every day and the same time every day, eventually the disturbing emotions and the trauma won't intrude in that space. You know, they're very intrusive to start with. This is true. But the only way to get to the point where we can release them, you know, is to do the practice, to take a little bit of time every day. It doesn't have to be a marathon, just a little bit every day. So trauma in particular is very sticky. It's in the body, you know, and this practice, because you're feeling the physical sensation of joy, it displaces the sensations that go along with trauma. So at first there might be some sort of conflict, like, you know, between how you feel because you feel trauma and how you feel because of the joy. It'll be a tug of war, but eventually the joy will win. Why? Because the joy is part of your intrinsic nature. It's part of you. It's part of our Buddha nature. The trauma and the negative emotions, anger, jealousy, cruelty, you know, fear, hope, all that stuff, they're adventitious. They are not part of our intrinsic nature, so they will pass. That is a guarantee. I will put $1 million on it. They will pass. So you just have to trust that they will pass and put a little bit of effort in. You know, it's funny calling it even effort, because it's actually taking time to relax, to do something for yourself, to feel connected and grounded. You know, it's actually not hard, you know, but you do have to kind of work through that if that is your experience. And you have to be kind of almost a little bit selfish. You have to go, right, this is for me. Because, you know, with the Dharma, you've got to start at home. You know, you can't be kind and compassionate towards others if you loathe yourself. It's impossible. It cannot happen. Start with your own heart. So this is for you. You know, this is part of your journey towards freedom. Think about it like that rather than, oh, it's a chore I have to do, you know, and I think that will help. And, you know, of course, always counselling is so important, you know. Dharma and counselling, I think, are great friends. I think those two things can go together really well.
Thank you so much, Pema. Very good. And if anything comes up in our discussions and people have further comments or questions, feel free to put it into the chat as well. You're not limited to one, it's okay. The next question, Pema, is mind being busy with all the things we have to do, like work, responsibilities, stresses, etc. So often joy is not even at the forefront of our minds as we run around both physically and in our minds. How do we cultivate joy proactively?
Yeah, so that's why I call this the joy challenge. So the challenge is, I tell everyone, and I'm a broken record, take at least 15 minutes to experience just ordinary joy every day. I don't care what that looks like. You know, watching a funny little short video on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok, something like that, sitting in a park, sitting in your garden, sitting on your balcony, sitting by your window, having a cup of tea. So you take the things that you're already doing, having a cup of tea, having a cup of coffee, having a shower, and you value add, right? So, okay, you're having a cup of tea already, we're having a coffee already, we're having a shower already. These are things we're already doing, you know, so value add. So when you're in the shower, as you get in, just do that breathing in through the nose more or less naturally, but then more slowly out through the mouth. Just do that a couple of times and just be in the shower. Use as your object of meditation the water falling on your body. Just be there in the shower. Feel how pleasant that is. That's a joyful experience. You know, likewise, I am mad about tea. So I have a cup of tea every day. Sometimes I'm naughty and I have two. And I value add the cup of tea. I'm doing it anyway. So I just do a little bit of breathing. I feel how the cup feels in my hands. I drink it, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future. I'm just there with my cup of tea. You know, so often we're having a cup of tea or a coffee or something in front of the TV, or we're running around trying to get dressed, or, you know, just do one thing at a time and just choose that one thing a day. The shower, or the having of the cup of tea, or the sitting by the window, or the sitting in the park. You know, it can be anything, and it only needs to be a few minutes, and you just connect with the pleasantness of that experience in a non-grasping kind of a way. And then just let that feeling be there. Once you become familiar with that feeling, you can connect with it very quickly. It's about becoming familiar, you know, like the Tibetan word for meditation means to become familiar. This is the same. We're becoming familiar with joy, which is not our natural state at the moment. We're moving back into we're going home to our natural joyful state. So we just need to do that. If we're super busy, like I am super busy, so you just have to value add the things that you're already doing. You make them your joy practice, you know. And also, again, if you're on the bus, you're in the car, you're in between meetings at work, just remember a joyful experience. Feel how that felt in the body. Connect, breathe, just for a couple of minutes. You know, it softens everything. It's very hard to become agitated at someone annoying in a meeting, though, you know, sometimes it's very easy. If you've just done 2 minutes of joy before you walked in, you know, and if, like, people at my work probably think I'm a little bit nuts, but, you know, in the middle of the meeting, I'll quite often just close my eyes, think of my Lama, connect with joy, just for a minute, you know, and then I'm smiling and they're like, why are you smiling? You know, just a minute here or there, and it actually builds, it's cumulative. So it has a cumulative effect that's actually greater than you would think just doing a few minutes each day. So that's what I think. I think you have to value add the things you're already doing, but you also have to make some time, at least 5 minutes, you know, just to sit still. And even if we're not Buddhists, you know, even if we're just regular people, taking 5, 10, 15 minutes out to connect with joy, to sit still, this is very beneficial. You know, it has, apart from being a spiritual practice leading to awakening, it's just beneficial, you know, it's good for us to do it. That's my preach. Very good.
Thank you, Pema. The next isn't so much a question, but more of a comment if you had anything to add to it. So it's the message is, if I notice I am in contact with joy during my day, it will be at a moment when I have put notions of me, mine, myself aside, all sorts of stories. This makes me think that being in self-absorbed mode is my main barrier to contact with joy. Any comments about that?
That's very insightful. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, what is samsara? You know, we're all here as Buddhists or Buddhist adjacent, you know, or just Buddhist curious. you know, because we're aware that something's not right, you know, something's not quite right with the world, you know. And one of the things that Togden Amtrin said, it's very, I've got it written down here, which is actually good. Samsara, this realm in which we feel we're trapped, in which there's all this suffering and dissatisfaction, right? He basically said samsara is simply perceiving your reality, and he really emphasized the word your. We all have different realities, you know. Samsara is simply perceiving your reality through the lens of the self. When that lens is removed, we experience everything as luminous awareness. It's not complicated. Those are his words. It's not complicated. So absolutely, the stuff that rises in the dualistic mind, thoughts, feelings, sensations, that we then self-identify with and think that that is us, that is literally the problem. Like, I'm not being figurative. That's literally the problem. Self-identification with what rises in the mind and thinking, oh, this is me. This is a self. And that self is called Pema. That's literally what keeps us trapped in samsara. Drukpa Kagyu, another great Tibetan master, he said, samsara is just the mind projected inwards. Nirvana or liberation is just the mind projected outwards, you know, open. One is clinging and closed. One is open and embracing of everything. It's really very simple. And the thing about joy, because it softens the mind, opens the heart, it also dissolves self-clinging and settles down all that stuff that's rising in the mind. The less of that stuff that rises in the mind, the less we have to self-identify with. So what we call self-clinging is actually undone by joy, by love, by compassion, by evenness. You know, it's undone by that stuff. So it's quite insightful to sort of go, oh, it's this self-clinging that is the problem. Absolutely it is. But you don't need to address that like it's your enemy. You know, you just connect with the joy and it will undo it. You know, it's not quick, you know, but it will undo it. Mind settling is all you need to do. Your own natural, you know, Buddha nature will shine through. You know, once all that stuff settles, there's less to self-identify with. It's easy to let that go. And then, you know, one's own nature is there and it only has these qualities: love, compassion, you know, evenness, joy. Those are the qualities it has. But it's not like, oh, I will have these qualities. These are open and pervasive qualities that permeate the entire universe. That sounds very hippie for me. The self disappears and there's just this, you know, Buddha nature. Love, compassion, evenness, joy. You know, the self just dissolves in the face of that. And then there's all that. That's all that there is, if that makes any sense at all. Ta-da!
Yeah, definitely. And we've got time for two more. So the next is a question. I can't seem to access those joyous memories. Also shame myself, even if there is resemblance of joy, as I think I should not feel that emotion.
Can you just repeat that? I missed a little bit in the middle. Repeat that for me, please.
Okay, sure. I think this relates to the earlier practice when you suggested that we just think of a joyous moment.
Remember a joyous moment.
Says,
yeah.
I can't seem to access those joyous memories. Also, this person shames myself, even if there is resemblance of joy, as I think I should not feel that emotion.
Yeah. So this culture we live in tends to either push us to be very hedonistic and just about our own pleasant feelings, you know, or make us feel ashamed of ever feeling good about ourselves. And actually it likes to, you know, to tag team us so that we always feel discontent, always feel like unhappy. because that feeds into the whole, the whole consumption thing. We will not buy stuff if we feel content. We will not participate in this ridiculous circus that we're part of if we feel content. We just won't. So the main thing is, there's a couple of things I want to say about this, and I think this is really important. Number one, all sentient beings are blameless, including ourselves. We are all trapped in samsara. Every last one of us, we're all trapped. We are all trapped. Trapped means we have negative emotions. We have disturbing emotions. We have negative behaviors that come from those disturbing emotions. We self-identify with this stuff that causes us to behave in sometimes harmful ways, harmful towards ourselves and others. We're all trapped in that. None of us voted to be here. We didn't choose to be here. We're here as a result of causes and conditions, but we are blameless, and particularly our fundamental nature can't be damaged, stained, or made less by whatever's going on, by whatever is happening for us. So the first thing is, I think, to shift this idea that, this kind of guilt thing, which is very much part of Western culture, it's also it is a focus on the self. To feel guilty is to be focused on the self as much as to seek pleasure is. They're both focusing on the self. So the important thing is, though, to remove that sense of I shouldn't feel anything good. The Buddha wants us to be happy. Why did the Buddha set out on his journey? Because he saw that we were unhappy. He saw sickness, old age, and death. His compassion was ignited, and he went to find a way for us to be free. The Buddha wants us to be happy. All awakened beings want us to be happy, to feel happiness and content and joy and love and compassion. These are not bad things. These are good things. And they're what the enlightened beings want for us. They want us to be happy and free of suffering. Can't labor the point enough. But if you can't connect with joy, right, and this was also my experience, at the beginning, you need to fabricate it a little bit. So you sort of search through your memory. When was there one time, and this is why you need to do this before you sit down, right? You need to do this as a kind of a reflection, maybe even journal it. When was there one time where I felt slightly okay? Just look for one slightly okay feeling, As I said, you're not looking for a big feeling. You're just looking for even a simple feeling of contentment, And you look for that somewhere in your life, and that's the first building block. You start there. But also, this is the fabricate part, you need to seek joy in your now. Watch funny movies. Go somewhere beautiful. Do something fun. Eat something delicious. This is important. We can't, Buddhism often gets like a bit of a bad rap for being like a bit, dark and focused on death and suffering, but actually it's motivated towards happiness, towards joy, towards love, towards being okay in every situation, evenness, So seek that out in your life. Funny stuff, fun stuff, pleasant stuff, delightful stuff. That's, not harmful. Simple pleasures. These things are fine. The Dalai Lama had a pet cat. You don't have a pet for, no reason. You have a pet because they're fun. They're nice. It's pleasant to have a cat. He also likes cups of tea. Whatever you can find, simple little thing that you can do to make yourself feel joy in your life now, that should be your job, until you've found it. As I said, you have to start with your own heart. If you don't feel okay in yourself, that's not a foundation for starting Dharma practice. So you have to start there. Ask yourself, why do I not feel okay with myself? pursue it, maybe go to a counselor, but just seek, you know, contentment, pleasant experiences in your life. So you can get that sense of, this is what this feels like. There's another, an associated practice, which is focused on sewa in Tibetan word, which means love. And also often people say, I've never felt loved, you know, and the Tibetan teachers are always like, oh, it breaks their heart, you know. But in the West, this is not uncommon to feel that, oh, I've never felt loved, you know. So you have to actually find it. You have to, you know, with a pet, pat your pet, recognize your pet loves you, you know, so you have to find it. You have to find that feeling. It is there in pretty much every interaction we have with other sentient beings. We just need to look. I'm not sure if that was totally helpful. I'm happy to go further if they want.
I thought that was very helpful. Thank you so much, Pema. Our last questions for today, because there's 2 in here, is this. Thanks, Pema. Other than consistent practice, what is your suggestion when trauma is triggered day to day? You talked about grounding and connecting back. Did you have any specific suggestions?
Yeah, the thing about trauma is that it is incredibly persistent, you know, so the thing of, so trauma, anxiety, panic, right? They are experiences of them in the mind, right? And the reason you feel it in your body is because it's from the past. The body is a manifestation of the past, you know. It is this way because it is a manifestation of the past. So the body is literally an anchor in the past, which we want to kind of somehow dislodge, you know. So, and the thing about trauma is that it's very persistent and it's in the body, you know. We can't run away from our bodies. So it's there with us all the time, you know. So this is true. This is a fact. So we have to kind of go, okay, I have trauma. It's in my past, but it's currently, you know, presenting itself in my present. What we need to do is we need to do a couple of things. These are difficult, you know. I'm not saying this is easy. It's difficult. First thing, recognize that the past is dead. It is dead. We use that word in Tibetan wisdom about the past for a reason. It's kind of dramatic. The past is dead. It cannot be in your present without it being imported by your mind, right? That being said, trauma is in the body, right? So we have these sensations and things going on that trigger us, and we have these memories, you know, and not just memories, but actual physical experiences that are very similar to that original experience, right? But they're echoes, you know, they're echoes of the past. So we have to accept this, you know, and if we can't accept that, then we'll never be able to get free of it. So it's important to understand trauma is real. It's insistent, and it's in the body. You know, that's really important. But it's also from the past. It's of the past. That's the only good thing about it. It's of the past, you know. And because it insists, it's insistent, and our minds are looking back, it, you know, comes into the present. And it's in the present that we have power over it. So we have to do 2 things. Number 1, recognize, okay, it's in the past. That will take a long time. You know, it'll take a long time to really feel that's the past. But so you need to remind yourself all the time, it's the past. Number 2, recognize its impermanence. So impermanence is 90% of enlightenment, 90%. The other 10% is shunyata, emptiness, right? In terms of the view, in terms of how we see the world, right? If we get impermanence, we're a long way there, you know? So recognize the impermanent nature of trauma and all negative emotions. It's impermanent. Nothing's permanent. Nothing. If you find a permanent thing, you'll be a very rich person because you'll have found the only thing that's permanent, you know? Recognize its impermanence. It's absolutely impermanent. But see how it's impermanent in your daily life. Anxiety, panic, trauma, they rise and they peak and they dip, you know. And there's a little thing you can do where you kind of give your trauma, your panic, your anxiety like a score. Okay, today I'm feeling anxiety at a level 4, you know. Tomorrow, oh, I'm only feeling anxiety at level 2 today, you know. So you give it a little bit of a score and you start to see, oh, it emerges, it rises, it peaks, it dissipates. Anyone with trauma, anxiety, and panic also knows this other experience of like relief when it eases off a bit. We have regular experiences of like, oh, relief, it's easing off, you know, and we go, oh, wow, yay. Relief is a really great thing. Pay attention to that relief when it happens because it tells you something. Ah, this is impermanent. It's calm, it's peaked, it's tortured me, possibly for a whole week, but now it's easing off, you know, it's easing off. And notice in your day, in your week, in your month, these, you know, these waves, how it arises, how it peaks and how it dips. And if you've got permanent, like, you know, generalized anxiety disorder like that, it feels like sometimes it never lets up, but it does. And you need to pay attention, observe, watch, look, and journal and go, oh, okay, today at this time, I felt anxiety of only in number 2, you know, and it was okay. So notice that it, even in your day, it's impermanent. It's not a constant, always 10 level anxiety, panic, and trauma. It has this wave. So those are the 2 main things. The third thing is counseling. Go to counseling. It's really important. And then the 4th thing is, again, nurture your heart, nurture your positive qualities, your goodness, your kindness, you know, and seek out positive experiences in the world. You know, Buddhism is like anti-attachment. We're not talking about that. We're talking about when you are not on solid ground, you need to recover first. So that's what you need to do. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Pema. I know I said earlier that we have time for 2 more, but we actually have time for more questions. And so if there's anyone else online or in person, if you have any questions, feel free to put it into the chat. So we do have a question from someone here at the centre.
Oh, hi, Pema. Thank you very much for talking so far. It's been really wonderful. I wanted to ask you about your personal Dharma journey and how you encountered your teacher and the teachings, if you don't mind sharing.
Especially how it relates to joy.
You just reined me in. You just reined me in.
Yeah, that you just think about and joy comes up instantly. Yeah.
So I was just about to go, oh, have you got 25 hours? Because I could talk about my teachers for like forever. So I became a Buddhist when I was 11 years old. So it's a bit of a longish story, but I'll try and be very succinct. So I was aware when I was a child that the worldview promulgated by the people around me was not a worldview I had. So I took myself off to the library and I read the Encyclopedia of Religion, which is a lot of, at that point, you know, it was pre-internet. So it's a lot of books in the reference section at the library, and it took me a while to go through them. So from A, animism, all the way through to Z, Zoroastrianism. Because I wanted to know, is there a religious tradition that is like what I believe, you know, or that I can relate to? Because I didn't relate to, I went to a Catholic school, and although I have no problem with Christianity or Jesus or any of that stuff, it's all totally cool and fine. For me, it felt very not right for me. I didn't relate to it, and I thought this is all, you know, particularly when I'm going to a Catholic school when it's very much in your face. You know, I was like, I'm not doing that. I was very much, no, I'm not doing that. It just didn't feel right to me. So I took myself out of the library, and then when I got to Buddhism, there was a little kind of like in, you know, get textbooks, they have these little squares where they have the key points. And I went through the key points and I was like, oh, yes, I believe that. And the next one, oh, yep, I believe that. So I think it was like, it was the 4 seals, you know, the 4 seals of Dharma. So I went through and I was like, oh, yes, absolutely believe that. Yep, tick them all off. And then I read the whole section, and there was nothing there that I thought, no, right. And then I went through, but because I was only in B, I thought I couldn't have possibly found it already. I read through the whole book through to Z for Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is a very interesting faith. But by the end, I was like, yeah, none of these reflect how I already feel about the world. Buddhism does. It totally reflects how I feel about the world. So then I told my mum, and she said, oh, well, did you know that your grandfather was a Chan master, Buddhist Chan master, and he was one of the first Chinese owners of a shop in Queensland. It was in the 1860s or something like that. I was like, well, thanks for telling me that, mother. So it was actually there in the family, but we had, moved away from it. It was not something that was present there in the family. So that gave me an interest in Chinese Zen. So I sort of started reading Chan Huangpo, is my favorite Chan master. And then I discovered through reading, again, because I grew up in regional Queensland where there was no Dharma, there were no Dharma temples, there were no non-white people in my world, really, until I was about 15 or 16 years old. So certainly no Buddhism either. So it was all through reading at first, and then I encountered the name of my teacher, Togden Rinpoche, in a book. And when I read the name, I felt an immediate, sounds all very hippie trippy, but I just knew. I was like, oh, that is my teacher. I knew straight away. And then, and that happened just months before he passed away. So I never got to meet him. So he passed away, and then I'm like, this is a tragedy. And so then I connected with other teachers, but never was it, I always thought I had to have a living teacher. My teacher had to be a living person, had to be able to speak to them, had to be able to ask them questions, all this sort of stuff. And so I did that, and it just all never really worked. It was always like, I have teachers, living teachers now who I love and adore, but they're not Dudjom Rinpoche to me. And I dream about Dudjom Rinpoche, and I like when I read anything he wrote, I feel his presence. It's kind of very hippie trippy. I'm actually quite practical and not at all like this in other sphere of my life. Like I'm quite a skeptic actually. So this was all very unusual for me. And then, so I knew about his lineage, and so I connected to teachers in that lineage. So particularly Nakpa Kambalunda Rinpoche comes to Australia quite often. So he and I became quite close. I count him as actually a teacher and a friend, and then connected with the Drukpa Kagyu, Togden Amtrin and this stuff through Jamyang Tenphel, and then to other teachers like Jamyang Tenphel, and I mean, and there's a number of women masters who've been really important in my journey, kind of almost too many to name. So there's many, but this heart connection thing that cannot be denied, that's with Dudjom Rinpoche. And so I just literally have to picture him and start to smile and feel happy, feel joy. And if any kind of disturbing emotions are happening in my world, which is, every day, because we are in samsara, I just think of my Lama. I allow the feeling to be there. I sit with the feeling and just also think of my Lama at the same time. And then always insight happens. Always the feeling is revealed, for what it really is. It's a very interesting thing. Anyway, so, I traveled to Japan because I also got interested in Zen for a while. So I did retreats in Japan, and then traveled to see Tibetans in America and saw Tibetans here. And, I think it's kind of a normal story for a white kid from Australia. It's mostly start with books and then try and find a teacher and try and find a lineage and stuff like that. I didn't have the good fortune to be born, in a Dharma country, with a family that understood Dharma and a temple just down the road. I didn't have that good fortune. So that, the role of books in Dharma life in the West, I think can't be underestimated. It's been really powerful, actually, transformative for a lot of people who otherwise would never have counted it. And I was certainly one of those people. you want more, less?
That was fantastic. That was great. Yeah, so we do have another question, so maybe we'll go to that, but I am so intrigued about your story, so if we do have time, I'd love to come back to that. The question we have is, Pema, how do we seek out pleasurable experiences for our heart without increasing the level of craving or attachment?
Yeah, that's the trick. That's the trick. So the thing is, when I was talking about find pleasant experiences, right? I'm talking about if you're not on stable ground, you know, if we have a damaged psyche because of trauma, we're abused as children, we've been in war, you know, whatever the reason, if we have damage, you know, which is not permanent, obviously it's temporary, but if we have been harmed, hurt, and we are damaged, we're not on stable ground. So we need to make a stable ground first. So that's healing, right? And then once we get sort of a stable ground, then we can approach self-grasping, you know, clinging, attachment, desire, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, in the Dharma, attachment is fundamentally a problem. So what you want to do is you want to seek gentle, beneficial experiences that are kind of healthy and about well-being. You know, those things are good and fine, like eating and breathing and drinking water. To feel okay about yourself is essential. You know, if you have self-loathing or hate or shame, guilt, you know, those are major obstacles actually to practice. So, and they need to be addressed, you know, not just ignored, you know, because if we don't address them and come to a kind of a stable ground, they can actually turn our spiritual practice into a kind of masochism, or the reverse, a kind of hedonism or spiritual materialism. You know, so whatever the thing is that makes us feel not okay about ourselves, we need to address that. We don't have to fully fix it, right? But we need to start to address it. We need to start to feel okay. Because what will happen when you're sitting in shamatha, if you've got all this self-loathing and stuff, it will come up and it can be very destabilizing, very destabilizing. So that's why the joy practice, you know, just by itself is, if you have trauma and anxiety and panic and stuff like that, is actually a really good place to start, to just get connected. And as I said before, what did I say before? So pleasure is selfish and, you know, closed, and there's no quality of sharing to it, you know? So that's how you can tell, is this really self-clinging, or is this about well-being? Well-being, although it's about, you know, the self, the care and maintenance of the self, it shouldn't be selfish or egotistical. There should be an aspect of sharing. And a really, really good thing is, you know, if we cultivate gratitude at the same time for those experiences and make the wish that all beings have these experiences, it can guard against that kind of like clinginess. So, for example, when we eat in our tradition, we say, may all beings be nourished, may all beings connect with the nourishment of their own true nature, something to that effect. When we drink water, may all beings' thirst be quenched. May the, you know, you kind of like start to have these little things that you say in your mind when you're doing things that are, you know, pleasurable and for you. You know, they can also be for others, and that's a process of slightly letting go, you know, dedicating it or wishing it for others, appreciative joy, and also letting go a little bit, you know. So, you know, when you go to the movies, you know, may all beings see the movie-like nature of reality. You know, you're enjoying the movie, but you're also making it kind of like part of your wish for sentient beings. And just that wish opens the heart, you know, and it makes it less clingy. So that's kind of important. But the other thing is, you know, the Buddha wasn't particularly concerned with minor pleasures. which is why he embraced the middle way. He tried austerity, denying himself, and it didn't work. And then there's that fantastic story where the milk maiden offers him the milk, and this is a pleasure, clearly. So, and he embraced it and didn't beat himself up and didn't go, oh, what a terrible Buddhist am I, because Buddhism didn't exist at that point. But anyway, he embraced the middle way, which is to not reject stuff because it's bad, but also not chase stuff because it's great. It's to have sort of a measured, balanced, food's good, we need it. Why eat something that's awful just because you feel somehow food is bad? Food in itself is neutral. So we have a kind of like an open attitude to it. It's not about, it's only if it's really clingy and there's no sense of sharing that it's a problem, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Pema. We have a question from someone in here physically who is interested to be a Buddhist chaplain. So the question is, would you mind telling us about your journey to become a Buddhist chaplain? What is your motivation and the challenges in this journey?
Okay, so I'm a chaplain at a university. So my main role is to facilitate people connecting, mostly international students, connecting with their faith traditions, Buddhist faith traditions, here. So they come from Nepal or Bhutan or China or Canada, and they're looking for Buddhist communities in their tradition, so I connect them to those traditions. The other thing is I help them deal with the ever-present stress of study and of being in a foreign country. So sort of teaching them mindfulness, breathing, all that sort of stuff. And then also if something happens for them, like they lose someone, they get sick or anything like that, then I provide support. So that's what the role is in a university. In a prison, obviously, is very different. In a hospital, very different again. Each institution in which you're a chaplain has its own demands, right? But generally speaking, what a chaplain does is just support people in whatever way they need it when they present to you from the tradition that the chaplain and the person presenting, come from. So it's about working through problems with a Buddhist lens. So that's what I do. And the motivation for it, it feels a little bit obvious, but, to help. I feel funny saying that, but that is the motivation. It's to help, to be present for others, just to listen sometimes, to be a heartfelt friend when they need it, like authentically, legitimately, and to just be, whatever they need at the time, just to help, really. So I think it's not a career to be a chaplain. I suppose it is. You can be a chaplain, that can be a career, but again, if it's about you being a good person or something, you'll quickly burn out. So for me, touching base with my own intrinsic nature keeps me on track, makes me aware that this is not about me, and also means that I remain present. Like, not, you have to be really present for the person in front of you. And I mean that word present in all of its kind of connotations, like physically present, psychologically present, emotionally present, spiritually present, just fully there. And that's sometimes all you need to do, just be present. And then they can, express what they need. But if it's in any way kind of about you wanting to spread Buddhism or you wanting to be a good person, I'm not suggesting anyone in the room is wanting that. But if these are the things that come up because of the dualistic mind's poisonous nature. Sometimes, it's like, I want to be a good person. So I think you have to guard against that stuff and just be physically present. And, the only skill you need to be present is openness. So you could, I don't think like knowledge about Buddhism is necessarily hugely important. Just to be present is really the main thing, and listen. Listening is a universal skill. It's not just Buddhist. But when people feel that you're present and that you're listening to them, they respond, and often that's all they need. They just need someone who is in a very heartfelt way, just present and there for them. Yeah. I'm not sure if I really answered that very well. It's a complicated thing because in the West, we have these careers, chaplain, meditation teacher, mindfulness instructor, all these things. But really, they're not careers. To think of it as a career, I think, is a bit of a problem. It's for me, a way to be present for others, a way to connect with others, and a way for me to be reminded constantly of impermanence, the suffering of samsara, and the value of open-heartedness, kindness, the giving of time and energy and care. Those are constant daily reminders. I think they're really important for my practice. So I think in a kind of a way, it is practice, and I think it should be approached that way rather than as a career. I haven't put you off it. Please become a chaplain. We need more chaplains.
Thank you, Pema. We have time for one last question before we do the closing and dedication of merits. So this message is, thank you, Dr. Pema, for your sharing and stories, so insightful. I used to practice metta meditation and now forgiveness meditation. Can we employ this joy practice into that? It seems complementary. However, I was told to complete forgiveness meditation before going back to metta. Hence, question of how and can we add this joy practice into my practice?
Okay, so first thing, in our tradition, we're always deferred to the teacher, right? So I would always defer to your teachers around this stuff, like whatever they've advised is the advice you probably should follow. So there's that first. Like if you have a teacher, generally it's wise to follow their advice because, they're not advising you for their own fun. They're advising you because it's useful and helpful, for you. So number one, if you've been advised to do a certain thing by your teacher, I would stick with that. That's okay. Unless you feel it's not working for you, and then you go back to your teacher and go, look, I feel it's not working for me. I am not changing. I'm not becoming kinder. I'm not becoming more open. I'm not becoming more compassionate. In fact, maybe I'm becoming crankier. Then the teacher will usually give you more advice, about that. But I think I might have said at the beginning, and maybe I just thought it, metta and joy are co-emergent. So when you practice metta, joy rises naturally. When you practice joy, metta rises naturally. They're co-emergent, they emerge together. And what we're doing here is focusing on the one that rises more easily, which is joy. Metta rises a little bit more difficult, because it really does need to be quite selfless to be powerful or potent. Whereas joy can it sort of moves that stuff through. It makes the selflessness possible, So I think, yes, they totally can be done together. Forgiveness practice is an interesting one because there is a big debate in the Dharma about whether or not forgiveness is important. It clearly is. It's like, what? Because it's about letting go of the past. It's about accepting how things are and letting go of them, and forgiving. That I think that's about relationship to the past, which is important. I think those things can be done together. I, however, would ask my teacher. Yeah. So that's what I think. I think you could, if you're going to do them together, joy first, then metta or forgiveness, and then shamatha. That's the way I would do it if I was going to do them together. Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Pema, and thank you for taking the time and your patience in answering all of our questions. Excellent answers. Very, very practical. So thank you. I'm now going to hand back to Elise for the closing.
Yes, I'd like to echo our thanks to you, Pema. It was a brilliant talk. Everyone loved it. Well, yes, everyone loved it, and it was. Thank you for your insightful tips and sharings. Before we close off, we normally do a dedication of merits. Is that like something that you're able to do, Pema?
Yes, I have a little one that I do. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just get it up. I kind of know it off by heart. I can post it in the chat.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful for people?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just post it in the chat, and then people can say it along if they want to, or they can do their own. Sorry, I wasn't planning to do this, so the Word document is taking time to open. So this is from, it's a little bit Tibetan, but I think you can sort of, I think it's also kind of a bit universally Buddhist. So I just sent it through to everybody. By this effort, may all beings be free of fear, sorrow, and pain. May all beings know wellness, tranquility, and love. May all beings abide in the perfect bliss and equanimity of their true nature. Om Mahum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone for participating, for those who shared and for those who held space for us. Before we close off, just a couple of announcements. So next week we have Andrew Bodie Kennings to talk to us on a topic to be confirmed. So still see you next week. And just for those who have missed out the beginning of the announcements, that we are having a Metta Center WhatsApp group. So if you're interested, you can send me your number through this chat or through the Metta Center email. And it's basically a chat for friendships. If you have any sharings or questions or feedback, you can share it in the chat. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week. And thank you, Pema.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Pema. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for those in person. Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.